New at 11, medical marijuana patients here in Connecticut are getting worried since the recreational sales began in January. Some say they can't find the products they need. Now, we spoke to one patient who buys her medical marijuana in Bristol. Channel 3's Eliza Krasinski joins us now live with her concerns.
Brian, we spoke with one patient with a list of medical issues, and she relies on medical marijuana CBD oil. But since those recreational sales started back in January, she hasn't been able to find what she needs.
This is a bad thing for a lot of people. This is scary for a lot of people.
Amy has epilepsy, MS, and even won her battle with cancer.
I had been clean of cancer with a simple lumpectomy for having breast cancer, and I attribute it to this medication.
She's been using CBD oil since it became legal in Connecticut, which she says is extremely effective in controlling her epilepsy.
Without the CBD oil, that means that the seizures are going to get really bad. And this is terrifying.
And she's one of many medical marijuana users who say since the recreational dispensaries opened up, it's been difficult getting the products they need.
I'm screwed. I am in big trouble.
Amy places orders quarterly from TruLeave in Bristol. TruLeave sent out a statement over the weekend saying in part, quote, "We are painfully aware of the limited product inventory across the state of Connecticut right now and are working closely with all of our producers and growers to restock our supply as quickly as possible."
Don't worry, you are a medical patient. You will always come first. Do not fear.
Other local dispensaries like Fine Fettle sent out a statement last week saying, quote, "The medical menu has shrunk and is lacking options patients are used to seeing."
All I can say that it's a plant and it takes time to grow. And what I am hearing and my message to, I guess, the growers right now is tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock.
The Department of Consumer Protection says they are aware of the patient's concerns, and other dispensaries like Grower Curaleaf in Stamford say they want the medical marijuana patients to know that they will continue to be prioritized. Live in the studio tonight, Eliza Krasinski, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Eliza, thank you.
Welcome to the Young Jurks. It's Mike Crawford back tonight talking about Connecticut. Two new guests tonight, first time on the show, but I've been following them for a while. Very excited to have them on the show tonight. We're going to be talking about Connecticut. Last night we talked about Maine. We usually talk about Massachusetts, but you're going to see a lot of the same issues are in different states. It's the same deal. It's just different steps on the process that a lot of us are in. Maine, like we covered last night, is a lot different. We're going to bring up the two guests right now, have them introduce themselves, and then comment about this story in Connecticut where patients are being left behind. We got Kristin, Souza.
Hey there.
And Rinaldi. I hope I said your names right?
You did. You got mine.
Great job, Mike.
Yes, awesome. Usually I get them wrong, so that's good. So far. I'll screw it up later, I'm sure. As the cannabis wears off, I'll
We're off to a good start.
We are. So let's go. Kristin, let's have you introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are, a little bit about your cannabis experience, and then tell us about, what we just saw, this video from Connecticut where patients are being left behind.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Kristin Souza. I'm the founder of Sugarleaf Boutique, which is a hybrid boutique in Middletown. So it's not a smoke shop, but it kind of caters to that type of demographic with a emphasis on women and other underrepresented groups in the cannabis industry. I also work for Beth Waterfall Creative, doing marketing and events for the cannabis industry in Massachusetts. And I guess as far as my experience with cannabis, I kind of joke I'm a legacy custy. So I've been around for a long time, but yeah. So, and I guess to what you were saying in the video there, that is something that myself and Lou have been both speaking on for months now. There were some stipulations with Connecticut before the rec market launched that there needed to be, I think it was 250,000 square feet of cultivation and manufacturing space. And the way that the state of Connecticut set it up is that it was only going, well, we only have 4 growers. So we're already dominated by multi-state operators. And so that stipulation automatically gave them that advantage because they get to just come out the gate running. And what we're experiencing right now is sometime in December, TheraPlant was experiencing financial concerns. They were saying point in time that they weren't sure that they were going to remain solvent. And we're starting to see that now. So that woman that was speaking on, this is really devastating for patients, and I can appreciate that. But, part of me, when she was saying to the growers, tick tock, I was cringing a little bit because the growers we have available to us are not fantastic. One of them is experiencing problems. We've got Curaleaf, TheraPlant. What are the other 2, Lou?
Is Trueleaf one of them?
Trueleaf has a retail location.
Or they're retail only, okay.
And they've got a cultivation license now as well, but they're not currently operating as a cultivator. We've got GTI in the form of
Green
Advanced Grow Labs, and we've got Verano in the form of CT Pharma.
So you
The
got
best
all
of the best.
the big cannabis, like the worst ones.
Yeah,
except for Curaleaf. Trueleaf's the only one that.
And
they're about to be on the list. Yeah.
They're dancing around.
Yeah. This is just awful.
Right.
This is the problem, right? It's like the worst operators get in, and these poor patients are relying on them with all their debt. This message, like it was this the first time that like Connecticut, big media like did a story about this issue? Is this like the first one, or do you think have there been some other coverage of this recently as you've been talking about this?
Go ahead.
So there's been a sort of a slow trickle. I think there's a lot of it's still very new here. Mass has got like 6+ however many years of normalization of this kind of news cycle, and we're still at a point where the newscasters aren't even pronouncing the names of the companies correctly. So, we're crawling before we walk here in terms of at least in terms of the mass media. The good news is that they're starting to catch on. In particular, we've gotten some traction from the more investigative side of things. The journalists whose segments are typically like consumer advocacy and that sort of thing. We've gotten some good traction there. We've had a little bit of exposure of the message, amplification of the signal, as I like to call it. But, we got a long way to go. We definitely have a long way to go. We don't really have a whole lot in terms of independent cannabis media that also has an investigative bent. And that allows me to, belatedly say thank you, Mike, for having us on. I'm a big fan of your work, big fan of your style, the way you go about things. It's been very inspirational to me in my personal journey as an advocate. By the way, my name is Rinaldi.
Thank you. I was just going to say that. You gotta tell everyone.
We're easing in funny.
Lou Rinaldi.
Yeah. It's all good.
I threw a topic at you. I threw this off.
Yeah.
No, you didn't. I did. I'm unconventional. Go ahead, Lou.
My story is basically I am a medical patient. I was studying data science as just a curiosity, and I decided to do some digging where those two curves intersect. And I started looking at the public data that was available from the state of Connecticut regarding the medical program. And for better and for worse, I ended up opening sort of a Pandora's box that I have yet to fully recover from or extract myself from in terms of uncovering things that I didn't expect to see, discrepancies, malfeasance, and then leading into some freedom of information requests and, coordinating with a couple of journalists. The 2 tips I give to anyone who's looking to get involved in advocacy in their state, and is new to the effort. Number 1 is familiarize yourself with your state's freedom of information laws. And number 2 is make friends with a good investigative journalist who's not afraid to speak truth to power and to shine a light on corruption and things like that. And those were really the two levers that got me the most traction and started to move things in the right direction. But it was a massive uphill climb because, you're starting from a position of, the 4 that we just mentioned have already been entrenched at that point. They've got a rhythm going, they've got a whole cycle of business and communication, or lack of communication, I should say. And who is this guy coming in here out of left field talking about lab testing, and what are his credentials, what's he all about? So there was a big run up in terms of being able to start getting that traction. But to your question, Mike, about do we get good coverage here? We're getting there, and they're finally starting to try to talk to some of the right people, in terms of not just talking to the attorneys or the people with interests, financial stakes in these companies, but the patients, the end consumer, the people who with mold allergies, the immunocompromised, the people who are really negatively impacted by some of these things that we're experiencing right now. So, we're still in that crawl before we walk stage, like I said, but I feel like we're starting to make some good progress. And I think a lot of people are really waking up to some of the realities of what goes on, as opposed to what they've been told by the regulator and the state and others. So it's progress. It's forward progress.
That's right. And I think what's so interesting to see is, I'm glad you brought that up, the investigation part of it, because for so long I felt like there was none of that. And more recently, even though there is, like you said, the coverage is starting to get better in some respects, but I feel like there's been such I saw an opportunity, both for what we were doing, is to provide information that, you're not going to see in the Boston Globe or some of these other places, or, especially TV, local news.
Right.
But I also feel like there's so many more, especially on like Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, even you're seeing like people find their little niche, whether it's with mold, whether it's like the blacklist, whether it's, people are finding their, you're able to share things to a wider audience on social media, I think. And it's a much more interesting life than being a total shill, to be a suck up for big cannabis, which, most people think that's the only way you can go. And I think more recently, people are realizing that there's actually a lot of opportunity in investigating big cannabis, investigating what's going on. That's really what I'm looking for. And I see both of you are doing it. Lou, I get a lot of information from you. And you're so right, too. Like, for me, especially, too, like the first story, even for Lorna, once I had that first story, that first journalist write a serious story, it was like rolling a huge rock down a hill at that point. That ball just kept on rolling. And sometimes you just need one. And I think that once you have one, whatever issue it is, you'll find more. And I think over the years, like, I've been able to do that too. I work with so many journalists, and a lot of times they're calling me now, like, before I would feed them stories, but a lot of times they're just calling me and asking me, what do you think about this? Or do you have any ideas? Or so you just got to keep, share the information. I feel like sometimes in the past, even with the mold issue with New England Treatment Access, there were people that were trying to hold all the information to themselves too tight. Like they were going to write a book later on it.
Right.
It's like, come on. And it's the worst way to do things. It's like, for me, I like to share information usually as soon as I can get it, like on Twitter, on Facebook,
especially when there's real people suffering.
Yeah. And then you get more information. When you share stuff, like if you share something really good from a whistleblower, there's probably 3-4 whistleblowers watching that. And one of them is probably going to call you later that night. Like,
that's right.
So like, that's why you should share information, and you shouldn't try to hold it so tightly. And then you're going to get more reporters calling you, more politicians calling you. I mean, that's really the end game, when the politicians and the policy deciders and they start following you. So I think, I love that we're talking about this. For other folks who are new and you want to do something, look in your backyard. What's going on at the dispensaries in your backyard? Talk to the workers, do FOIA requests. There's so much you could be looking into, especially with the bigger brands. I mean, it's obvious. Do you guys have it? I feel like Lou got a good portion now. Kristin, do you have something to say on any of this?
No, I mean, I guess I'm just like nodding along, especially with the reporters picking up on it part. I don't know what shifted. They're definitely paying attention to what folks are saying on Twitter and Reddit. And, I've kind of made jokes. It's like, I don't know where the shift from don't listen to the idiots on the internet to like, oh, look at all these things we're seeing online. But those are prompting them. Like that letter from Fine Fettle, regardless of how we feel about it, they kind of said, we acknowledge what we're seeing online because patients coming out and sharing their story. I think that's the first step, right? Like you can't just yell into the abyss of the internet. I do always say your Instagram post isn't enough, but it's a fantastic start. And it's a really great way to get people that would have never heard you otherwise to hear you now. You can harness the, power of social media in great ways and get, like you said, with the Lorna story, that snowballed in a fantastic way. That was the story to have snowball. And without people picking up on that in social media, that may not have happened that way. So.
A lot of reporters on Twitter, especially, but LinkedIn too. But it's just it's interesting to see how one could turn into like 30. It's just
Exactly.
unbelievable.
Right.
Lou, what do you?
and
What?
that's-
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Kristin. Go ahead.
No, I'm just corroborating what you're saying.
I think we're all agreeing tonight. This is going to be funny. We're talking over each other to agree. That's like
It's better than arguing, maybe. I don't know.
enthusiasm.
Like here.
Yeah. So you mentioned, Mike, you made reference to working with legislators and politicians, and that's something that has taken on, I think, even more importance here in Connecticut recently because of the story that you aired at the top here and those kinds of things that are happening right now. These sort of I won't call them unforeseen, but they are consequences of the adult use rollout, certainly, and they are having tangible, real world impacts on patients who like the unfortunate one in that story who was clearly in approaching a panicked state regarding not being able to source the meds that are needed to manage her condition. So it's one thing to come up with an idea, but it's another thing to really effectively communicate and advocate for that idea and engage with your legislators and start to turn it into something real and to take that idea and to take it to the next level and get it, turned into a bill. And that's where, working with Kristin has been great because she is the smartest kid in the room when it comes to the political aspect of things. And she's also a much more palatable communicator than myself. Let's call it that. She is kind of the good cop to my bad cop in a sense. So and I guess that's a third piece of advice for advocates is find folks who you're able to work well with and and focus on your goals, focus on the outcomes that you're trying to achieve, and then chart a course and just chunk out the work and get it done. And that's what it's been great taking this idea. In particular, we've got this one notion of we have a regulator here in Connecticut that is the Department of Consumer Protection, and within the department there is the Drug Control Division made up of former law enforcement who are responsible for cannabis in Connecticut. That's a loaded statement in and of itself. But having said that, we look at, well, as a regulator, you're tasked with oversight. You're expected to, take action as needed to keep things running in compliance with the regulations and running the way that they're supposed to go. And if you look at the history of actions taken by DCP from an oversight standpoint, there's been one product recall in over a decade of the whole program, the medical program, I should say. And the only reason that happened in the first place was because one of the lab directors accidentally told on himself and, sort of forced the state's hand. And the other thing that we saw last year was enforcement actions against unlicensed operators, which is perhaps the most troublesome piece. We legalized cannabis, but really what we did was, we made it legal for you to put your money in certain buckets and not in others. So it's really troublesome to see. So if we're not expecting great things out of a regulator. We don't have a cannabis control commission. We don't have sort of a dedicated independent body tasked with oversight. We have the same group that's responsible for whether or not you get a liquor license, and and enforcing those kind of things. So and gambling and that kind of stuff. So we lump cannabis in as a vice. We treat it as, we don't do anything in terms of priming the pump, in terms of breaking the stigma. There was no kind of public messaging campaign. The only messaging that's out there is punitive and threatening in nature. We got the highway billboards, don't roll up before you roll out, that kind of thing. So my point in saying all of this is, so if we're not expecting great oversight from the regulator, then what do we do? And what we've proposed with this bill, I think it's a Connecticut House Bill 5539, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the number. It's an act to create an ombudsman position within a different part of the state government that would not be under the purview of the regulator. Sort of checks and balances, sort of that classic American government notion of checks and balances.
Love it.
And yeah,
I was thinking we may have to do the same thing with the Cannabis Control Commission of Massachusetts, like, come up with a second group to, especially for the labor stuff, but who knows? But I mean, that is, we're talking about the same things in Massachusetts, like going over their head. Like, we got to go to the state house. You got to pass.
I mean, I look at Fall River.
Yeah.
I look at Fall River as a great example of having to go in over their head, because, nothing happens there until the feds are involved. You know what I mean? There's always going to be situations where, for one reason or another, through dereliction or abdication or any other excuse, that the job is not getting done, and someone who's in a position to take corrective action needs to be brought in, and it needs to happen. It can't just linger indefinitely and be allowed to fester. So that's great to hear that you're seeing. Not great to hear, but it's comforting to hear that Mass is dealing with a lot of the same challenges.
I just wonder too, because we're looking at an environment now with these MSOs, Curaleaf, Trulieve, Verano, GTI, a lot of them are leveraged up. They have a lot of debt. Their market price is dropping every day, both for their product and their stock price. So everything's down on them. Their interest payments have gone up because interest rates are going up. So, they're all debted up, and their only real exit plan, I think, is like big tobacco coming in and buying them out.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to happen for a long time. And I think we may have a point in the States where, we're already seeing it. Jobs are now being lost in Massachusetts. I don't know about Connecticut, because you only have 4 of them, 4 cultivators. But Massachusetts, they're cutting jobs. And I think this is the trend nationwide in cannabis, is that jobs are going to continue to be cut. And it's going to get worse and worse for this industry. And then we're going to have more problems with supply and demand, just like we are seeing with your demand, supply and demand issue in the medical. I think there may be an opportunity to push a lot of new things that would never have happened at the State House of Massachusetts, to totally change the industry, to even go a Maine model in some respects, especially for medical cannabis. Do you think that's even possible in the state of Connecticut, or do you think that they're so far gone on what they're doing right now that there's no chance of that?
I don't think they're so far gone. I don't know. We may differ on this. I don't think we're so far gone. I think that we've trended in the wrong direction for a couple of years now. But I'm cautiously optimistic that getting the attention of the right folks in the Senate and the House, you just have to shake up a couple of people, get a couple of co-sponsors, and much like with journalism momentum, politician momentum is much the same way. And if something is popular to the constituents and it's reasonable and it makes sense, that's good. And Connecticut postures quite a bit on wanting small business to thrive and all of those things. So I always say, you have to kind of show what's in it for them. And the state of Connecticut has very much speculated and projected out tax revenue. But I don't know that we wouldn't be able to, as a state, pull that revenue from ways like Maine's caregiver program and things like that, right? You can do it the right way and
Absolutely.
still balance the state budget off of some reasonable taxes without destroying the program. So I don't know. That's my stance. But there's a lot of work to be done, and if the same old voices keep showing up and lobbyists, and of course there will be a lot of special interest groups that show up with money. So you're going to be, it's a challenge. It's an uphill battle for sure. But I think there's hope.
I
I
like
think we're
that.
so fresh that we can do it. We're new, we
Yeah.
can still do this.
Even
Well, we're
Massachusetts, I think there's hope. I'm glad you brought that up, Kristin. It really depends if people show up. If people like, it's possible. I think it's possible in Massachusetts. I think a lot of people are missing that we have an opportunity to really fix a lot of the issues. Not at the commission level, because I think that they're so blind. I'm talking about going over their heads, the state house, the governor. Kristin thinks it's possible. What do you think, Lou, in Connecticut? Is that kind of dream impossible?
I'll preface my response by saying that Connecticut, probably more so than just about any place in the country outside of our nation's capital, is completely and totally obsessed with public image being paramount and protecting that perception. And to what you said earlier, Mike, Connecticut is, we're kind of in a little bit of a time lag, right? We are the peak of Green Rush Mountain. So it's a question of perverse incentives, right? The state is incentivized to prop up these MSOs to show that we have fertile ground here. If it didn't work out for you in Oregon, in Arizona, in wherever on the West Coast, come on out to Connecticut.
We'll make it work.
Yeah, we're still dealing with the latent prohibition and prohibitionist minded tendencies of a lot of the boomer and plus population. So we do have dispensaries down here. I haven't been to a mass dispensary in years, but I stopped into a local one for the first time in a couple years down here over the weekend, and it's unrecognizable. The perimeter is basically loaded up with touch screens. You got bearded dudes milling around trying to see if anybody needs help. And then you're like kind of forced into this velvet rope bank line where you get what you ordered at the kiosk and you pay your money, and only then are you allowed to leave, and only then are you allowed to look at the product that you just bought. You have no idea. You were just handed a bag with whatever inside. You don't so
It's like a trust game.
That sounds familiar. That sounds like every store in Massachusetts, basically.
Okay. All right.
Almost.
So yeah, I mean
there might be a couple, but yeah.
So that's in service to all the NIMBYs and the folks who are like, oh God, it's cannabis, it's terrible, and we have to make sure that it's set up like a bank vault. So in terms of whether or not it can be better, I think, Connecticut has some legislators who do understand the challenges here and do get it. There is a structure in place, a structure that, you talk about going above the regulator. Unfortunately, the complicity in the regulatory capture here in Connecticut does go all the way to the top, which is again why I bring up like a Fall River type scenario,
Right.
because sometimes I think that's what it's going to take. We're in a market here where the state gets to pick winners and losers. We don't have traditional American free market capitalism. We don't have a situation where if you can, jump through some reasonable hoops and pay a reasonable application fee, you can get a license, you can open up a business, and the market can decide whether you succeed or fail based on how good of a job you do or don't do, which is a reasonable expectation for any industry, I think. And in the captured markets, Connecticut sort of being the standard bearer these days, that's just not how it works. All of the first social equity licensees are all people who have some degree of connection to industry, to lobbyists, to MSOs. It's not a situation where we have truly open and equitable access to the market. So I think until we get to a point like Kristin referenced the Maine caregiver program, Maine has a very wonderful tier of their license structure where I think you're limited to like 500 square feet. I think that's the cutoff for the smallest.
Flower, I believe it's for flowering. Yep. And I think you have a little more for for the veg. Yes.
Right, but it's I mean, you're not gonna be running out of a warehouse, you know what I
No,
mean?
no.
So I think if we can get something like that, there's always going to be a market for mids, right? There's always going to be that Bud Light, Miller Lite consumer who
Exactly.
just wants to get some cheap stuff and have a good Friday night, whatever they want to do.
And
And
they
there's
want to
always
go
going
to
to
a store. Some people like
right,
stores and some people like to have a delivery
right.
service. I go
And
to a
then there's
main
delivery,
Yeah.
there's direct to
I go to a main
consumer.
caregiver and I had him on the show last night. It's just amazing. I can't explain it unless you experience it, but
Yeah.
there's thousands of guys like him in Maine. They're all legal, they're all licensed. And I was asking him last night, how long did it take you to get open and licensed? And he went through an extensive process and it was like 6 months. And I'm talking to other folks from Maine who are caregivers, and they're saying like, it's between 30 days to 6 months, basically, depending on how you do it and what you get done. But in Massachusetts, we're talking 3 to 5 years,
Yeah.
and
Y'all have a long process with
yeah. So people talk about social equity in Massachusetts. Like, if you don't fix the 3 to 5 years, there isn't social equity. I don't care if there's a fund for it. I mean, I get the fund is going to help some of the folks that Lou just mentioned, but what do you guys think about the whole social equity kind of movement? I mean, I like the idea. I want to help a lot of the guys who have spent like, raised a lot of money and they're bankrupt and they still don't get to open. And they're good people I know who are working class, they're hustlers. They're not
Right.
Curaleaf. They're not True Leaf.
Right.
Right.
And they're not getting to open. So I want to see something else. If they don't get to open, like they somehow get a license, like a caregiver, like they have in Maine. But I mean, what do you guys think about this whole social equity movement, I guess, at this point?
I think it's one of those amazing intentions and in so many places bad execution. Like Connecticut, for example, we did a census to find a disproportionately impacted areas for folks that were impacted by the war on drugs. But what they used was not only incarceration data, but they used income data during COVID while folks were laid off. And so you ended up having these very wealthy shoreline towns that, for some random tweak of data, that were showing up as disproportionately impacted areas. And that was just absurd. Um, it, so that's, exhibit A of, good intention, bad execution. Of course, but beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think that people that were arrested or incarcerated for any cannabis related crimes in the past should have first dibs. And we can't have people sitting in prison while we have, forgive me for this, but a bunch of frat boys making millions and billions of dollars every year because this is legal now. But at the same time, in Connecticut in particular, we've set it up where a social equity candidate had to be an equity joint venture. So it's not truly their business. They're partnered up with an investor or someone out of state or an MSO. And so I kind of struggle to articulate this because I think it was a very, very good idea that somehow got manipulated by the wrong people. And now it's just not being implemented right. And I don't know how to fix that part, but the caregiver thing, right? That gives everyone a fair angle. How is there equity when I think it was like $3 million you had to throw down to get a dispensary license in Connecticut?
The
What
caregiver
kind of equity is that?
the caregiver model in Maine is social equity. I think that's what we should. It should
Strive
like
for.
if it's not a caregiver model, there is no social equity. I think it has to be like we got to lay it down because Massachusetts, we have caregivers, but you can't find one because they don't allow them to be for profit. Like they can't sell to dispensaries. They can't sell to customers. It's like, it's supposed to be like a charity thing. It just doesn't work. And I don't even think people even know about it. They like changed it. There's a limit on it. It's really messed up. They need to do what they do in Maine. Let them have a business, let them actually, make money on it. I mean, this is ridiculous. If people want to help patients, we need a lot more growers. We had a few comments come in. One said, "Greetings, common people."
How?
That we are.
Yeah. And then Reefer Madness is still alive and strong in Connecticut was another comment from YouTube. And then someone influential, I think he's the SSDP top person there. Yeah, Jason Ortiz wrote.
He's the executive director of Students for Sensible Drug Policy and a Connecticut local as well.
He said, would the governor be who would appoint the omnibudsman?
Per this bill, there is no stipulation as far as who would appoint it. But I can't
No
speak to
would
that.
be
I mean,
my
it wouldn't
hope.
be a governor
The answer to
appointed
that would be
role.
no, if I had any say in the matter.
So I guess appointment, right? Like there's, I always like joke about this, like clarity of language. So being appointed to something is like kind of like as a disclaimer, I'm a Democrat and I'm on the Democratic Town Committee. So I was appointed to a committee because the mayor kind of said like, I would like Kristin to be on this. And that's just sort of a, for lack of a better word, a connections thing, the crap we don't like, but it's very low level and it's schools and no one else wanted it. But that's besides the point. So appointment, no, we would not want the governor to handpick a friend and appoint them to a position. Now, whether it would be someone that would ultimately roll up under the purview of the governor's office because it's a state government role, I don't know if that would necessarily be avoidable.
Well, it's DECD or whatever, the Department of Economic
Development or something.
yeah, something like that. So it's not within DCP, but ultimately, I mean, it all does roll up that way. Mike, I wanted to circle back real quick to your question about social equity.
Yes.
My thinking on this has kind of evolved somewhat. I'm of a mind now where I just feel like anyone who wants a path to be, involved in the regulated market should be able to get one. But it starts with a willingness to kind of concede that the oligarchy model of, the 4 MSOs and whatnot is not, was not the way, and that we need to be willing to kind of spread the money around a little bit and spread the opportunity around. So I feel like if somebody's, if there's a caregiver who's sort of growing and supplying a small community of their own patients locally or something like that, make it as easy as possible. Remove as many barriers to entry as possible for that person to get to the market. If they're already largely operational in a way that's working for them, then just let them know what they need to do to be compliant with the regulations and to prove those things. You look back in the history of the medical program, even some of the medical dispensaries, Caring Nature in Waterbury, Connecticut was one who was cited, I think, as recently as like 2016 or something like that, for just, we don't feel like being compliant. We don't feel like, keeping, adequate business records.
Math is hard.
Yeah. So it's not like anyone has figured it out. No one state has gotten this right. And we're in, like you said, Mike, we're in a position to make things better. And I think the way that we do that is by cherry picking some of the stuff that has worked the best in markets like Maine, in markets like Michigan, in other places where, little bits and pieces can be brought together and cobbled into something that's kind of more than the sum of its parts. I think the real challenge is breaking out of this sort of structure of regulatory capture that the state is in right now, because there's so many sort of handshakes that were done and deals that were made and sort of promises made to investors and guarantees on return and whatnot. That has to be sort of, that has to kind of run its course, and it has to be seen as sort of a demarcation point from there to sort of the 2.0 version of whatever this looks like. And that could get ugly. I mean, Kristin made reference to Theraplant, which is SPAC, Green Rose Holding Company is the parent company, who also owns something out in Arizona. I can't remember the name of it, but there's currently a war going on between the investors and the board for wresting control of those assets. And like you said, if these companies, or even some of the smaller players in the MSO space, are going to be bleeding out, private equity and everybody else is going to be salivating over carving up those assets, right, and how they get divvied up and who gets the license, what sort of concessions are made from whoever comes in to do that cleanup in terms of getting the license or being able to flip that to somebody else. There's a lot of intricacies in this, and it's a lot, but that side of it doesn't really have a practical application, again, from the patient and consumer perspective. All we want is variety in the market, choice for people, and accurate product labeling and truth in advertising. One of the other big problems that we face down here is the undisclosed preemptive remediation that impacts virtually every product that's on dispensary shelves down here, that patients and consumers, they don't even know about. People who ask about that in a dispensary, they get shown the door. They get told, no, we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to be addressing this. Please, get out of here, basically. There's a lot that needs to be done. And a lot of that is just kind of looking in the mirror a willingness to reflect and be honest with ourselves and say, hey, you know what? We wanted Connecticut to be a gold star sort of shining example of what cannabis markets could look like. And it didn't quite work out that way. But like Kristin said, there is still hope, but it is contingent upon a willingness to sort of eat a little bit of crow and say, yeah, we screwed up some things. Maybe the fake strain names aren't the best idea. Connecticut is the only state in the nation where we don't actually call, sour diesel. It has to be given some fake made up pharmaceutical sounding name that requires like a Rosetta Stone to translate what you're getting. There's so much, ludicrous stuff like that I'm not even trying to dunk on the people who came up with these ideas. I'm just saying we tried it. It didn't work as expected. Let's pivot. Let's not be afraid to reflect and pivot and move forward in a way that makes sense, in a way that's going to be inclusive and truly equitable. That's what we're hoping for. But it feels like pie in the sky sometimes. It really feels almost unattainable.
But I hope it happens, because I think it needs to happen. It's just it would be so good. It would be such a good thing for the citizens, for the workers, for the people who want to be in business, and most of all for the patients and consumers. And you know who else it would be good for? The politicians and these regulatory bodies. People would love them. People would be like, yeah, you guys kick ass. Like, I think they're afraid they're going to look like crap. Well, they're going to look like crap if they don't do something. Like
Right. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I don't want to say popular, because that kind of has like negative connotations. But when the new legislative session kicked off in January, there were quite a few cannabis related bills that were on that list in Connecticut. And they range in variety from absolutely absurd to really, really good. And, some of these will go to committee, some of them will fizzle away. But the fact that we have so many different representatives, and some of them were Senate bills, that are even willing to talk about these issues is very favorable. And
what were some of the good ones that you recall? Any of them?
Yeah, I think the ombudsman one was really good. Obviously, we have a little bit of close attachment to that one. That was pretty good. There's one about looking at cannabis lounges, which I don't hate. I saw Colorado is looking at that. New Jersey is looking at that.
It's happening this year, one way or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
the lounge thing is happening. So we can either get out in front of it or we can get knocked over by it. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Kristin. Please go on.
No, I think that's a good one. There are some related to release of incarcerated persons and further expungement of crime. Now, Connecticut did really good stuff with the Clean Slate Act. So we did erase simple possession charges for, I'm not going to get the stats right, but quite a few people. And Connecticut did get some national recognition for that. And then there's even more crimes that are non-cannabis related that will be erased from folks' records moving forward this year. But we can go even further with that and go beyond the simple cannabis possession, and anybody that's still doing time in prison should unequivocally be released. So any bills up that are looking at that, I think, are phenomenal. And I get a list in my inbox. I wish I could tick them all off, but I want to say there's like a dozen right now. A couple of them are, listen, I already said this, one team. So the other team's got a few up that are a little bit more negative and kind to,
regressive would be the word.
Ones I don't like, right? There are some Republicans that put ones up that want to, and I've referred to it, basically they want to bring back stop and frisk, and they want to be able to say, oh, I smell cannabis on you, and do whatever it is that they want to do. I mean, I am unequivocally against that one. We cannot give that.
I don't think that's coming back.
No. I don't.
My experience, and none of that stuff is coming back. But can any of the good stuff go forward? That's the bigger question.
Something else that I think is really interesting in terms of bills that are pending right now is Kristin mentioned there was a requirement to have 250,000 square feet of canopy before the adult use market could legally launch. That was in the law, that was in the regs. So TheraPlant having these problems, I don't know if it's impacted. I don't know about the tangible impact on their cultivation. What they're turning out. Day in, day out. But one of the ideas, one of the bills is we have a community of licensed hemp farmers in the state that have long felt aggrieved that they were not grandfathered into THC, that they were not allowed to do that. And, some of them are positioning themselves right now as kind of a turnkey solution to the problem of Theraplant's collapse. Hey, we're geared up, we're ready to go, come on in, check us out, make sure that everything looks good, and then, turn us loose. And that would speak directly again to the story that you ran at the top about the supply issues and the availability issues. But it does, like I said, it requires loosening that iron grip. And maybe your 6-month window of exclusivity on the adult use market, where 4 producers control 100% of that market, maybe that's not going to be as fruitful as you thought it was. But guess what? As of July, all adults in the state of Connecticut can home grow legally. Patients can already do it. And as of July 1st, all adults are going to be able to do that. So you're already on a slippery slope in terms of maximizing that window of first mover advantage that they've managed to kind of artificially extend. But getting the hemp farmers involved, maybe finding a way to bridge that gap, if it can be done right, I think is something worth considering. I think it's you got to get creative with solutions at this point, and we do have to be thinking outside the box. We can't just be waiting for someone to say, well, this is what we did in Colorado, this is what we did in Illinois. No, I mean, it's got to work for the people that are here. It has to be viable to get into this business. It has to be worth it for someone to invest and to get into this and to do everything right and to play by the rules and go by the book and be able to continue for years and years and have a business that's serving, creating jobs and doing things that we want to see happening here in Connecticut. So that's another one that I think is worth considering, and I'm going to be following the discussion on that for sure.
The comment committee said, I think they'd shut it all down before they open it up to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that is the state we live in.
Yeah. That's a cynicism that's out there. I don't blame you in a way for thinking that, but we all need to think more positive. Like, we can actually get things done if people get involved, not just us 3.
Right.
Yeah.
And great segue kind of to relatively unpopular opinions sometimes, but when you're positioning someone who is elected, they're ultimately balancing the state's budget. So what's in it for them is often tax revenue. Then that can be icky or it cannot. So if you can do some math to show them where a caregiver program where X amount of folks are paying a reasonable amount of money is just as profitable as 4 people paying an astronomical amount of money, you've sold it to them in a reasonable mathematical way that they don't feel foolish standing in Capitol chambers arguing on your behalf. And then at that point, they can get passionate and emotional and have data to back it up. So sometimes it's gross to have to think about the money, but that's just to some degree the reality, because they're not the United Way. They're not entirely all good people get elected, but they need to stay elected to do good things. Yeah. So, they've got to kind of, I don't want to say play both sides, but find that balance where things are reasonable. So I always say to do that. So I don't think that it's impossible or that they'd throw the whole program away. It just needs to be positioned in a way where it's
a win-win. That's what it needs to be.
I'm rambling. That's it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think there may be also an opportunity in some of the states when the revenue starts dropping. Because if businesses start closing, tax revenue is going down. Tax revenue in these businesses isn't always going to go up. No. And I feel like Massachusetts leaves 75% of the tax money off the books. It's all going to the illicit market or Maine. It's not they're only getting $1 out of $4.
And we won't be any different.
Yeah, Connecticut's response to that, Mike, was to hire 5 tax auditors just for cannabis compliance. That was the move to counter that down here.
Yeah. It's still not going to bring in the money.
Right. You alluded to this earlier, Mike, about how it can be a thing to make politicians look good, right?
Yeah.
If you make a good move, you got people on the populist left, you got people on the populist right. They all sort of come together and understand, look, the whole culture war thing, the pitting us against each other, that's noise. And if we can find, sensible and creative solutions and ideas to move this forward in a way that's going to work for people and not just for corporations, then any politician that wants to get behind that and boost that effort and really have it be seen in supporting a populist cause in a way that is, clearly in service to the people, or at least less in service to the corporations than it currently is. I think there's a real opportunity for anyone, particularly, newer folks who might be trying to make a name, like Kristin said, stay elected. But, we're fortunate to have gained attention from, from some of the leadership on some of these ideas that we've been talking about. So I think I do get cynical every once in a while, and I do kind of have thoughts like that commenter had.
Right.
But then I remind myself that, the opportunity is there. It's waiting sort of for us to do our part, to hold up our end of it. And if we're, you can't really complain if you haven't done that much. If you haven't tried to engage in the process in good faith and met in the middle and really kind of checked your ego at the door and focused on the outcomes, focused on the goals that you're trying to achieve, and work with the politicians in that way. Now, maybe you gain traction, maybe you don't. Maybe you get the runaround from a lot of them like we have. But, every once in a while you hit a diamond in the rough. You're not going to win them all. But maybe you can get some good things done. Maybe you can find ways to make things better in your area, because that's why I'm in this in the first place, is because I saw people, patients, who just by virtue of the fact that they are patients, have some sort of, at a minimum, discomfort and more likely prolonged suffering. And I don't like seeing them get effed around. I don't like seeing them get taken for a ride or treated like cattle to have value extracted from them. And that is the message that I think politicians can latch onto and, hopefully actually believe in that, in that sentiment. But that resonates with people. And even if they're not cannabis people, you just hear about, hey, this is a group trying to help out other people. It sounds good. It has, it plays, as they say.
And sometimes it just takes time too. Like I can remember going into one of the more not, I would say he was really, I don't think it was a state rep's office way back in the day. And I don't think his hang up was so much that he was reefer mad. I think that his hang up was he was the #1 cop supporter and law enforcement didn't like it. And how was he going to explain it to law enforcement? That's really what I realized it came down to with this rep. And I kept going back. And I remember the first time they were like, they thought I was with with a professional organization, like a lobbyist, like, or even like a professional cannabis group or something.
Yeah. Trade
and when they found out I was
something.
just a patient,
Like more grassroots.
Yeah.
they were like, oh, and then when I came back, they were like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, so like sometimes I just need to get to know you, and getting to know you is like sometimes a second or third time. And that's it. Like we're not talking about like hang out with them every day for a year. No, like a second or third time, and to have it be pleasant. Like you ask for something, you don't get it, you come back, you're still asking for it again. Like sometimes that works. It's like they respect the process. They're like, and a lot of times I feel like we don't realize that when they see someone come back, they know it really matters to them.
Yeah.
I think that's just it, right? And like sometimes it's easy to sit there, but like these are just people, like the three of us, that for one reason or another were either asked to run for office or they decided to run for office, and now they are where they are. So they're just everyday people that you run into the grocery store. They just happen to be in a position where they can write and vote on bills that directly impact our day-to-day lives. And that whole point of getting to know them, I mean, that's just human nature. You get to know somebody, and I just think that's so important. And sometimes I'll tease my friends. Don't chase them. Don't yell at them. Don't send the super strongly worded emails out of the gate, right? Because how are you going to respond to something like that? I can see Lou laughing. And they have so many bills and pieces of legislation and memos flying at them every single day that some will resonate because it's something that resonates with them. But they do not know what's important to us until we let them know. And if you let them know, and I let them know, and Lou lets them know, and like the guy in the comments lets them know, all of a sudden, all they're hearing is, HB number 553, and so then it piques their interest, and they're bored at home looking up stuff about cannabis on their phone. And that snowball happens with one person who's now sitting in a side office in the Capitol building with their buddy having coffee, be like, hey, have you seen those 3 on the internet that are always talking about weed? Like, for real.
Yep.
It really happens like that.
It's humbling. It's humbling, especially when that's been my biggest failing. I'm just going to be real. My biggest failing has been in terms of communication and messaging, and thinking that because my information is so robust that I could, summarily browbeat people into, coming around, just by virtue of the truth and the facts alone. And the reality is the world doesn't work that way. And that's why, having somebody like Kristin that I get to collaborate with on this stuff is so great, because she has an intrinsic understanding of this.
I take his data and sweet talk it and sugarcoat it a little bit.
Yeah. It really is. It's been such a, I'm not coming with a sledgehammer anymore. You know what I mean? I have like a very diverse toolbox now, and they're not just blunt objects.
Sometimes you need a sledgehammer, though.
Yes,
Every once in a while.
Depends on the audience.
Yeah,
Shout out to Caleb in Vermont. Sometimes you need a sledgehammer.
One of my buddies was like, back in the day, he's like a real business guy, and he said, so he was talking about a specific person that we both knew that was really smart, but like, you would not want to be in an argument with him. Let's just put it that way. And he's like, every company needs one of those guys, or every like nonprofit organization. And usually it's just like, we got this guy, you don't want to deal with him, so don't deal with him. So don't get on our bad side, and you don't have to deal with him. And like, then just put him away. Like he's
I say, like, we're gonna play nice 4 times before we bring out the big guns. You know,
wheel out Hannibal Lecter in the straitjacket every once in a while.
He's back in the closet. You don't have to talk to him anymore.
Like, all right, we tried this the nice way. You asked for this.
Sometimes I like to be that guy too. I enjoy that sometimes, but it's what's hard is when you have to turn it back. You're like,
it's that tandem that works.
So many times I've had to apologize for these guys, especially when they like. I've had times when I'm hammering the politician, and then the next election they come back like for the first time. They're like, "This happened to me." The state senator was like, "You were right. I'm so sorry." And then like I feel bad. Like I'm like it's weird. I don't know.
No, don't feel bad. And honestly, getting passionate is one thing. Getting inappropriate is different, right? Like they get real freaking passionate with each other in their own meetings. It's like they get really, so like a constituent or a patient or an advocate getting really passionate at them, I think that's reasonable. That's showing that like you're intense, you're serious, you mean business. You're not just like, well, if you don't mind, could you please maybe consider looking at this?
Caleb Teskey's listening. He said, I need a Kristin to soften my blows.
Yeah.
I think we all do.
I'm for hire. No, I'm kidding.
It's made all the difference.
Someone wrote, that's you, Mike, LOL. They know me. I don't know who that Facebook user was that wrote that. I have my partner too, Carmelita, who says, I can't do everything for you. Sometimes you have to do it on your own. I know I can do it on my own, but it's just quicker and easier if I ask you first.
You know what? Delegation, we'll call it.
She doesn't like that.
Partnership.
Yeah. It depends.
Playing people to their strengths. That's what we'll call it. Let everyone play to their strengths.
Not delegate.
So we're having a great conversation. My name is Mike Crawford. This is the Young Jurks. If it's the first time you're listening, we have 2 great guests, Kristin Souza and Rinaldi. We're talking about cannabis policy in Connecticut. Stanford. Do you guys, WWE headquarters, have you ever been over there? Do you know anything about that?
Driven by it on 95 a million times. Yeah. The chrome and glass building. That's about the extent of my involvement there.
That's the only time I've seen it too, is driving by 95. But I don't know. I have a thing about the WWE. I know some people who've been involved in it, and I have a love-hate thing with it too. So it's interesting. I give people a crap all the time for watching too much professional sports on television. I'm a jock. I still watch it a little bit, but mostly not. But then I'll say, that's trash watching that NFL every week. But there's nothing wrong. Then they get mad. But I say, there's nothing wrong with myself watching WWE Raw for like 2 or 3 hours though every week.
It's different.
It's probably worse. I don't know.
One of my best friends, and I mean, it was a long time ago. I'm going to date myself, but like loved watching. Right. So we watched. Was it WWE then or WWF? I don't even know, but yeah. So like I watched it a long time ago, like, back in the day.
Me too.
It has been a minute.
So
We don't have a whole lot of landmarks in Connecticut, so that's one of our big attractions here. We got that.
Oh,
in
I
the casino.
imagine. I mean, yeah, that in Foxwoods.
We have Mohegan Sun too.
Mystic Pizza.
Yeah,
Julia
we
Roberts
got it.
movie. I went to Mystic. with a girl way back in the day. Yeah.
Okay.
To check because of that movie. She wanted to go. She saw the movie and wanted to go to. They have an aquarium there.
Yep. Mystic's cool. Mystic's a cool little
It
shoreline
is a
town.
nice little town.
Yeah.
But Connecticut's nice.
It's not bad. No,
No.
it is nice.
So speaking of Connecticut cannabis and the policies and just even in general, if there's anything, do you guys want to bring up anything else? Is there anything that we didn't talk about tonight that you really want to bring up tonight?
And we both go silent.
It's
Well,
all right.
I
We
think what I always try to say is if this conversation has resonated with you, and if you're a medical patient in Connecticut, if you're just a cannabis consumer in Connecticut, if you're someone who's interested in how the intersection of cannabis and politics and affecting positive change that benefits people, then get in touch with us. Reach out. Kristin is super active on many social media networks. I'm still pretty active on Reddit and LinkedIn, and I'm kind of sort of back on Twitter at this point. But get in touch with us and let us know, if you've got, a particular skill set that you want to bring to bear to help us out with some of this work. We're always looking for more folks that want to join and get this thing moving in a real positive way, and continue to get that media coverage focusing on the things that matter and not so much about whether or not there was a long enough line at the opening of adult use and optics kind of stuff like that really doesn't make a big difference in the lives of people. So get in touch. We're here. You probably know how to just search us up. We're easy to find. We don't hide.
No, and that's a good segue into, I think, Mike, you were saying before, it can't just be the three of us. And it's not, there's a whole handful of folks that get involved, but in advocacy and circles of folks that are getting involved, maybe politically, you tend to start to see the same faces. And
Yeah.
I know there are so many people on the perimeter that I don't know if they're nervous or they think it's harder than it looks, or it's more time consuming and they just can't handle it. That's another snowball, right? Start by writing a letter to your rep. Go to your planning and zoning meeting in town. They might even have them virtually, so you can just log into a Zoom like the third Thursday of every month. And the more involved you get, like I can just speak for my city. I live in Middletown. It's a relatively large city. Our lieutenant governor lives here. We've got 2 state representatives and a state senator. Simply going to planning and zoning meetings, I have access to a decent chunk of the Connecticut delegation. So sometimes people overthink it, and you'll run into these folks just at a very local and municipal level. And that's how you start to learn how to become more involved. And like you said, becoming a face that they recognize and a voice that they recognize, it just sort of gives you that authenticity or authority or whatever when you want to speak to them about something that's important to you. So my little plug for civic engagement.
Yeah. Awesome. I really appreciate having both of you here tonight. We're starting to do some stuff in Massachusetts too. There's a new group that Danny, he's a whistleblower and worked at some of the big MSOs. He was a friend of Lorna McMurray. He started a group called Join Mass. Oh, actually, wait, no, it's called the Mass Cannabis Workers Union. I keep screwing this one up, but I think people should definitely join it. I would suggest you guys join it. I would love you to be a part of that group. It's Mass Cannabis Workers Union Facebook group. We're doing some organizing, and I think you guys could be very helpful to us in Massachusetts too in that group. We're also doing an award show for workers in May at Davis Square in Somerville, Massachusetts. May 7th is a Sunday night. I hope you guys can come to that too. I don't know if you travel, if you come up to Massachusetts. Are you going to New England Cannabis Convention?
I am.
You are?
Yes.
What about Lou? Do you travel?
I do travel. I'm generally open to checking things out. So yeah, that sounds the awards, the worker awards thing. That sounds really intriguing. I'd like to learn more about that.
May 7th, we're going to do that. So hopefully, yeah, we'll discuss that a lot more.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to the what is it? New England Cannabis Awards event too. They have their own awards event.
Are you talking about the NECAN event?
Yes.
Yes. At the Heinz Center.
Now I'm confusing people because I'm talking about 2 awards. We're doing one, and our friends at New England Cannabis Convention are doing one. We're nominated for a bunch of awards. I think we all are. You're nominated too, right?
We are. I saw all of us on there.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to us all.
Cheers.
That's a good event. I think people should definitely check it out. The awards show too. You'll meet a lot of people there. But we're doing our own awards again on May 7th. So I hope people check that out. Tickets aren't on sale. We don't even have anything announced yet, but I just want people to put it on their calendar and be prepared.
I think that's great. I'm absolutely going to put that on the calendar.
May 7th, you said.
May 7th, Sunday. First Sunday in May.
And I am in Mass a lot.
Yeah. It's in Somerville too. It's a perfect location. It's a small little theater in Davis Square. It's like 2 dispensaries right next door to it. So, I mean, it'll be nice. Yeah.
Very cool.
You have been added to my iPhone, sir.
Oh, excellent. We're confirming. I hope other people are listening or planning on going as well. I think we got some more comments too. Maybe we'll post some of those up. Julie just wrote, I shall be there too.
Right on.
I am from Vermont. And I don't even know. I'm posting comments that are coming in from other countries that I don't even know what they mean.
We have international viewers tonight.
Yeah. Julie's got it circled May 7th. Awesome.
Nice.
So I want to thank you both for being here tonight. Again, where can people find you if they want to hook up with you in Connecticut? Like I know you said Facebook, Twitter. Do you have handles or websites or anything like that you want to plug?
Yeah, sure. I'm Classic Kristin with a K. So it's KLASSIC_Kristin. Also Sugarleaf CT Boutique is my store.
Yeah, great place, by the way. If you're ever in the area, check it out. I'm on Twitter as CTMMP Data. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me these days. So yeah,
I find you on Twitter. I like your info. I'm glad you said that because you aren't on Twitter as much, and I want you to be. So I hope you are.
Yeah,
I'm asking you to stick on Twitter, Lou.
I saw a post like it lives.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I'm trying, Mike. I'm trying. It's a big balancing act, with all these different platforms and trying to get the balance right, both in terms of the presence and the messaging, and also your own mental health and keeping it all in a harmonious cycle. So
I know about that.
Yep. So that's Twitter generally has been a good, certainly more discourse oriented than some other platforms. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, for now, that's definitely a good place to get in touch with both of us. Easy way to reach out if you'd like to get involved or just chat us up about whatever. We're here.
Thank you so much, Lou, Rinaldi, and Kristin Souza. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I want to thank everyone who's been listening and commenting online. Oh, wait, we also got some more comments. Here we go. I'll post this one before we leave. I am also nominated for the Vermont Activist, Julie writes. Judging for them right now. So I think you're getting some votes right now for the award.
Well, thank you. So in full
goodness.
disclosure, I am assisting the director of education. So I will be in the room with the speakers. So come find me if you're going.
Oh, really? You're doing the NECAN awards?
I'm helping. I'm a worker bee.
Yeah. I actually booked the first couple of those, like maybe the first 3 of them. It was fun.
Wow.
Right in the beginning, we had no idea what the hell we were doing. I was asking for direction from them. I'm like, what the hell do you want? Do you want activists or do you want like people who want to be in the business? Because we couldn't even figure out like when those things started, it
was really new.
It was so new. It was so new. And I look at them now and I'm like, wow, look how far it's come. It's crazy.
Like it's the first time it's coming to Connecticut, which is just kind of funny because you can see like the difference, just
you know what the vibe is. It's like the first time that you ever saw highway billboards with a website address on the East Coast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It took like 5 years
To
after
get there.
California had it, till you saw it out here. We're always in that sort of, like I said, that lag time. And it's funny now because it's starting to happen around here, for better and for worse. And it's funny to see how it manifests in that uniquely sort of Connecticut kind of way.
It is. It sure is.
Yeah.
We're experiencing a lot. I want to thank you so much. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you.
Thanks so
We'll
much,
talk
Mike.
soon.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Have a good
Have a great
one.
night.